Hi folks, welcome back to Introduction to Maritime Careers and Opportunities. This is week 5, Afloat Jobs in Inland with North Shore Technical Community College. And I'm George Berkeley and look forward to talking with you about some inland jobs. Last week we talked about deep sea and coastal jobs, and now we're going to talk about our inland work. We focused last week more on deck and engine licensure. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about the technology and try to get you a little jazzed up about the great things that happen in the inland towboat business, understand a little bit about their terminology, technology, and how they do business. We are still in this side of the deck officer license structure. So this is operator uninspected passenger vessel down here in the lower right corner. We have an exam also up into an apprentice mate program. That's with 1.5 to 2 years of sea service required, and our apprentice steersman of towing vessel. This is where most of our towboat applicants would show up in the license structure up to their master of towing. So 3 years of sea service required. That'd probably be about 6 years of linear actual work in the business. Here we have 15 barges being pushed by a pretty good sized towboat. This is a common sight of the Mississippi River, and these vessels travel the Superhighway, our river superhighway. And all those rivers throughout the entire heart of the United States all come right down to Louisiana. And that superhighway is full of super jobs. So the Arkansas and the Tom Bigby, they're fed by the Tennessee and the Missouri. And of course, that upper Mississippi River and the Ohio, they all feed down to New Orleans. Great jobs, great companies, very progressive companies with excellent work environments and excellent pay. Kirby Marine here is one of the best. You'll find their offices here in New Orleans and Houston. Big company with a lot of boats. But here's some other companies. Florida Marine Transport. They're right on Highway 190. Another big company with a lot of boats. Golding Barge Lines. Genesis Marine. Used to be Hornbeck's inland fleet. Sold off and reconfigured as Genesis Marine. ACBL, Marquette Towing. You'll see those push boats often in the intercoastal waterway. Very nicely maintained vessels and pushing oil barges and chemical barges. Buffalo Marine out of Houston, Kentucky Towing, many others out there. Lots of business, lots of companies, lots of work. A lot of history too. So I'll take you back in time here a little bit. This is the Sprague. This is the largest towboat ever built. Very powerful, big paddle wheel, good for backing down on the river, good for pushing big heavy tows. And this towboat push up to 80 barges at a time. Be a mile almost length overall of towboat and tows. Burning black oil. Notice that really dirty smoke coming out of her. Back in the day, our modern engines are immaculately clean compared to the power plant on these old vessels. And she pushed a lot of oil barges in her day. That was her mainstay. Wheelhouse was different back then too. Of course, a really big wheel, no power steering, so you had to generate your own torque with a big wheel. A lot of speaking trumpet tubes that you could holler down to the engine room. There was no electronics. Real simple vessel, and took a lot of experience to be able to navigate something this big with this primitive guidance equipment. Enter into a more modern version of our tugs. Here we've got the Warren Hines. Built in '82, you still see boats like this regularly out on the river. This is very similar to the boat we just saw earlier pushing those coal barges. And some things that you notice, very low to the water. Usually had 2 engine rooms with 2 propellers. And this is the wheelhouse on the tug. These are push knees, and they push up against the barges. And we've got kevels. That's what these are here. And there's a winch system, and the wires are brought back. And then they're wrapped forward up to the winches to tie the barges into the push knees. And the boat has special propulsion systems down here now by her propellers, which we're going to look at shortly. Some other words you might want to know that are important nomenclature. You've seen the radar and these spotlights, very important spotlights, a lot of visual navigation going on. Here's our push knees, and the face of the push knees push up against the barges. So we have a face wire. This is a face wire button. In this case, the face wire comes off the barge down through the button and then to a winch, usually a manual winch on a small boat like this one. We got back in the back here, you'll notice this is called a rake up forward because it's a barge-like hull, so it has a slanted bow. That's your rake. And then we have freeing ports, these are to let the water off the deck if she gets wet on deck. We got two rudder systems. We got steering rudders here in the back, our propeller, and we've got flanking rudders so that when the propeller is going ahead, water is being sucked down the hull and through the propeller over the steering rudder. But when the vessel's operating a stern propulsion and the propeller is going backwards, the water is getting sucked from over here around this blade and pushed forward over this one, so this rudder here can work when she's backing her propeller. This is a little different. This is a towboat. There's some different things happening on a towboat, and this is more like an ocean-going tug. Could also work in a harbor. It's more traditional, so it's going to have something we call a capstan. A capstan's a vertical bit, looks kind of like a spool of thread, and we've got H-bits. They can either be athwart ships, as you remember from our earlier nomenclature, which is side to side, or they can be inline H-bits. You'll see these are bits on the side of the boat for tying things up. Here we've got a tow hook. This vessel's a tow hook style, and it's shown as hydraulic pins back here. So on an ocean-going tugboat, you'd have your tow hook, which you could have an emergency release on to let your hawser, which is your line, go. Most modern boats don't use this tow hook anymore. They use a winch with wire, and they use hydraulic pins. This is also called a staple. And if this device here were up on the bow of the tug, it would be called a bullnose. This is your fendering system. And we're going to have a shaft coming from our engine room, and there's going to be a propeller, and there's a Kort nozzle, which is this shroud around the propeller, and we have rudders on the back. We're going to see some more examples of this in later pictures. These are tow sticks. This is how traditional yet modern towboats, many still use this system. So here's an old one from up on the lakes, and here's a more modern towboat, probably a vintage from the 80s. And then even today, built today, we still have companies like Cobalt and others that build these controls, still being built today. So we've got two sticks here, and we got throttles, and the way the boat works is when the throttles are ahead and the boat's moving ahead, looking out the front windows here, and you're standing between the tow sticks, if you reach your hands down on these lower tow sticks, those are your steering sticks. And these upper sticks are for your flanking rudders. So when you back the engines, and these throttles are in reverse, then these tow sticks here work for the flanking rudders for the stern propulsion to help move the stern one way or the other with those rudders. This is a tugboat in the port of New Orleans, the Vera Bisso. She is a ship assist tug, and she's also equipped with flanking rudders. Even though she looks like a modern tractor tug, she actually has twin screw and flanking rudders. Here's what they look like underwater. You have your propeller, and this is your steering rudder, and these ribs on here are designed to help keep the water stuck to the blade. So you'll see them right there. They try to keep the water, the wash, from running sideways across the blade. And you'll see these dents pulled out of these two rudders. That's to allow it to have range of motion, because this is our flanking rudder and the shaft has to go by it. Sometimes you'll see this is the bottom of a model, but it had a really good picture, so I thought you'd like looking at it. You could see the steering rudders are here, and here's our shafts and our propellers. And we don't have Kort nozzles around it. We have what we call an open wheel boat, or open propellers. And then we have our two flanking rudders on either side, so when the propeller is operating a stern propulsion, we can steer with the flanking rudders. Very important when you're in river navigation to be able to use our flanking rudders, is you have to back the boat down to make a lot of the turns, and you want to be able to steer while backing. Here's some Kort nozzles right here with single rudders. They're called high lift rudders, but they're regular old rudders, and just a nice fancy new kind. And we have our propellers inside these shrouds called Kort nozzles. Here's some other Kort nozzles on a big ocean-going Rheinauer tug with these toe pins. These poke out and stick into the barges, but we talked about that last week. But I thought it was a really good picture you'd enjoy seeing of these fixed Kort nozzles on this tug. Here's a Kort nozzle that goes around the shroud. Look how big these are. Well, there's a person there. It's an adult. Look at the size of them. And these has 3 rudders behind it. Very common in the inland marine, is to see these 3 rudders. Here's a more modern system where we've lost all of our typical controls. We just steer by computer. And with these little wheels and throttles and all small things, and you have a joystick. And that's really the future we're seeing on a lot of the boats. The traditional systems are going away. There's a lot of training involved to be able to manipulate these modern systems. This is Thrustmaster of Texas. That's because a lot of these modern systems are operating Z drives, so we no longer have rudders to steer the boat, but the actual drive itself azimuths around in a full circle, and it can steer the boat using the Z drive. Very modern engine rooms too. A lot of great jobs in the engine rooms on these boats. They are kept in immaculate condition. They require a lot of maintenance and upkeep, and they require personnel to watch them carefully. Look how clean this space is with the chrome-plated lines. Everything's neatly painted. There's people every day down here wiping and cleaning and really obsessively taking care of the engines because they're the lifeblood of the boat. Back upstairs in the wheelhouse, we have a lot of training and complexities for our computer navigation systems. The job has changed. It's become a more modern job. Even though we have tradition, we also have a modern job. It is an excellent career to get into. I really like this modern tugboat wheelhouse. It's got a clean aesthetic. You can stand between the 2 consoles, and you can see that you have these azimuthing controllers that also have the throttles in them. Likely the vessel has Z drives underneath her, and she's a modern systems boat. So some review here. If you were asked to identify the difference between a tugboat and a towboat, a tugboat being the one that helps a ship get to a dock, and a towboat being one that pushes barges, would you be able to pick it out? If so, could you identify those push knees? How about if you were asked to name a few notable companies in the inland tow business? Do you think you'd be able to name them? Or describe the function of a steering rudder and a flanking rudder, and how they work, and what they're for, and what the differences are? Well, if you can do these things, then good deal, and welcome to the inland tow world, because you now have a lot of the words and a lot of the key components of what makes this business tick. So that's the end of our presentation. I hope you enjoyed yourself. We're going to have a short quiz on just some of these words, and I'm really glad that you had an opportunity to get your feet wet in the inland tow business. Thanks. This is George Berkeley signing off.